Hey everyone, I'm Josiah Simons.
I'm Jackson Fordyce.
And this is the Demo Day podcast. We're here with Larsson Jensen, former two-time Olympic medalist, Navy SEAL, and the hardest job he's ever done, venture capitalist.
Absolutely. Way harder than the Olympics or being a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, thank you for your service for being a VC.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Thanks, guys. This is going to be a great show.
Yeah, so I just wanted to start off with how is venture capitalist, how is it harder than being a Navy SEAL? Because we hear that all the time. Hardest job in the world.
I'm in the arena.
Yeah.
Are you guys watching the X posts, the VCs congratulating themselves?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
VC
exactly.
brags.
They always talk about how it's harder. Yeah. It's plainly not. But I mean, being an entrepreneur is definitely challenging. There's no question about it. I mean, we have the Elon quote about being an entrepreneur and starting a company is like chewing glass and staring off, a cliff into the abyss. I think that's concretely the case with the founders that I've met. All of these things are really, really hard. I don't compare myself to them necessarily, but I am the founder of this firm, so I have walked a mile in their shoes in terms of my own entrepreneurial journey. One of my mentors taught me that people really, really like their money, so convincing them to give it to you is extremely challenging.
Yeah.
And I could say without a shadow of a doubt that is the case. It is hard to convince people to invest in you. It is hard to differentiate. It is hard to paint a picture of why your strategy and your story is different. And we've walked through that journey ourselves. And for us, when we started, we were very contrarian to the point where I think more people laughed us out of the room than welcomed us into it because we were firm believers in American exceptionalism as it applies to technology, furthering our national cause for all things technology. Which does include supporting the U.S. Department of Defense and my former community in the SEAL teams and special operations. At the time when we started this, there really wasn't a comparable other than InQtel out there. And so where the box we fit in as it relates to limited partners and venture funds was definitely something that we had to massage our way through and paint a convincing argument. So back to your question, I don't think venture capital is at all as hard as being an Olympian or a Navy SEAL, but being an entrepreneur, I think, is.
Wow. What's the biggest difference between starting your own fund like you did or starting your own company, a startup?
I not so jokingly say that our job is much easier than with starting a fund than starting a technology company.
Okay.
The reason is, and there's similarities in the sense that we need to convince people to invest in us to get started. Same with startups, right? We had to convince people to invest in us, limited partners to invest in us to get started, and then we have to make intelligent resource allocation decisions, just like a startup. Who do we hire? What do we do with this money since we've now got it on the balance sheet? But we don't have that intermittent complexity that is the hardest part of this, in my opinion, building a technically differentiated product. The packaging of it, the marketing of it, the storytelling is certainly part of it, but we definitely don't have to build a technology engine inside of our firm. So in that regard, it's inherently easier than being a startup founder that needs to build something that nobody else has ever built.
Yeah. So you've shared the story, I'm sure, so many times of your life story, of the three things that you've done that are all incredibly hard. But, share it with us one more time because our audience might be new to who Larsson Jensen is. I think that is just so interesting. You start out as this, probably one of the best swimmers in America. You have to be to go to the Olympics. What was that like growing up, being so dedicated to swimming? What's your story to get to the Olympics?
Well, certainly didn't start there. Didn't start as one of the best American swimmers.
Yeah.
That was the culmination of a pretty rigorous career that I had at a somewhat of a young age. So I guess starting from the beginning, I grew up on the outskirts of Bakersfield, California, in between two small towns called Shafter and Wasco, California, in the Central Valley. My parents were almond farmers, and so we had a very rural agricultural upbringing that comes with everything alongside that. So we didn't have a lot of neighbors. I think that we were taught as children in that family the virtues of traditional American hard work and traditional, I would say, middle American values, which I think transcended into my career in sport and beyond. I think a positive byproduct of growing up somewhere where it's very hot in the summertime is you get thrown in the pool, you got to cool down. And for me, it was playing in the mud in the almond orchard or getting in the backyard pool. And so I think through just that, outlet of wanting to cool down is originally the genesis of my career in swimming. Fortunately, through swimming at the Shafter Stingrays and then ultimately for the Bakersfield Aquatic Club, I just had this opportunity to be pretty good in a small pond, and concentrically my pond got bigger over time. Maybe an authentic aquatic analogy. My pond got bigger. I became a bigger fish that outgrew my small pond and had to move into a larger one over time. And ultimately that led me down into Southern California, where I swam at Mission Viejo, and ultimately over at the University of Southern California, USC, where I'm a diehard Trojan fan. Fight on. So hopefully football season goes well for us this year.
Big Ten.
Yeah, Big Ten. We'll see.
I'm
nervous.
My fingers are crossed. I was telling Dan earlier, my favorite school in the entire world is USC, but I was too dumb to ever even apply.
Well, listen, I was too dumb too. Fortunately, I had swimming. That helped out.
I don't have that much going for me.
Week 1, LSU.
Yeah.
Big challenge.
That is going to be rough.
Come on.
Oh, we're going. My son, he's having his 6th birthday during football season. And we're like, his name's Riker. Riker, what do you want to do for your birthday? He's like, I want to go to a USC game. So I looked, October 12th, it's USC, Penn State. I'm like, all right. He's never been to a game at the Coliseum. And so his first game
is a day. Oregon, Ohio State.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like the best day in college football history.
It's
Have you heard
crazy.
about that?
Dude, no.
It's the day.
Do not be going to a wedding on that day.
Okay. Yeah. Now I know. I'll tell my wife.
Babe,
hey, listen, we got to mark that one off. We're not going to do that.
Riker's day.
It is. We're gonna have a great time. So I'm bringing my oldest son, who's named Troy, by virtue of the USC connection, and my wife and our 2 boys are going to head up there and watch the game.
That's great.
So really, really looking forward to that.
When you were growing up, like moving your way up with swimming, was there ever a moment where you were like, I'm good enough at this that I could have a shot?
I'm kind of that guy.
I'm kind of the guy. Like I could have a shot to be in the Olympics someday. Was there ever that change of mentality?
At any point in any of the careers that I've been part of, I don't think there was ever a single moment. I think there was a series of moments that built to that point in time. But if I had to point to one, I think it was the inspiration of watching the 2000 Olympic Games. That dates me at this point, although that was when I was a kid. Watching the Sydney Olympics, where the Australians did an astronomical job, and the United States and Australians have a friendly rivalry with swimming, sometimes
friendly,
sometimes more friendly than others. And so I was just infatuated by watching that, seeing Ian Thorpe win by multiple body lengths, seeing the same thing with Grant Hackett. And I was a young distance swimmer myself. And so I looked to that for inspiration and was just infatuated by those guys and how beautiful and effortless their stroke looked and how they were setting Olympic and world records at those games. And that was a catalyst for me to double down and refine my stroke, try and mimic the things that they were doing right. And they were heroes to me. What's crazy about this whole thing is after doubling down and really focusing on my practices, doing the 5 a.m. workouts, all the things that come along with the territory of being a swimmer, which I think is a very mentally draining sport. A couple years later, I was swimming against those same swimmers when I was 16 years old. So rewinding the clock, I was 14 during the 2000 Olympic Games. And in 2002 was my first international competition where I swam for the United States for Pan Pacs. During the summer months is when we generally have our international swim meets. Pan Pacs, World Championships, and the Olympics are the big 3 that the United States has. World Champs are every other year. Olympics, as we know, are every 4 years. We just had the 2024 Olympics. And so 2002 was when I did my first international competition where I swam against Grant Hackett and Ian Thorpe and all of those guys. Wow. And I was actually 16 when I broke my first American record, which to this day, I really don't understand how swimmers can be so good at such a young age, but you see it a lot, most often with women, but oftentimes with men as well, where, people like Phelps, myself, Pearsall, Lochte, et cetera, that whole generation, we were pretty good as teenagers and then got even better into our 20s.
Is it true what they say? Don't meet your heroes?
Don't meet them.
How was it meeting your heroes?
Well, I beat him instead.
Unfortunately, they kept beating me. So I guess in that sense, not a great thing to meet those guys. But no, I think that it was a great thing to meet my heroes, and it was an interesting dynamic. Because I remember very acutely, and I caught up with Grant very briefly, who's Grant Hackett, who beat me almost every time in the 1500. Where I got second to him in 2004. And although I did a best time and, touched the wall, like my goal that whole year was to smoke that guy, to be clear. Like that was my intention. I had his picture up in my room with a target on his back. Like literally
throwing darts.
Yeah.
I'm
coming for him. But I think that's one of the great things about sport and athleticism is like, there's nothing personal involved with that other than like, I'm hoping he's going to have the best race of his lifetime and that I'm going to beat him with the best race of my lifetime in the swimming pool.
Yep.
And it didn't work out that way. unfortunately for me. But I dropped an insane amount of time, and I remember touching the wall after coming in second to him, like, wow, like I just gave, my Olympic hero a run for his money. How cool is that?
Yeah.
He still is my Olympic hero to this day. I've told him that. He is my Olympic hero. He is my Olympic idol. I look up to him so much.
Yeah,
and he was an inspiration to me then. Just like hopefully, I continue to be an inspiration to the next generation of American swimmers thereafter.
What is it about like those big moments in life? I mean, you always see it state track meet. That's when everyone drops their best time of the whole year.
Yeah.
Same with the Olympics. What is that? What is it with that? Like, why are we able to rise to the occasion when the pressure is on most? Like, you've probably experienced that in your own athletic career.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I'm sure that people have done like some very rigorous studies on this. I tend to not always listen to academic studies. And the reason for sports is we've done studies for 50 years on how fast the human body can go, whether it be in track and field, how high we can jump, how fast we can run, how fast we do the mile, how fast we can swim the mile, how fast we can run the 100 meters, how fast we can swim the 100 meters. And guess what? Everyone who's done a study on this is wrong all the time. We always approach this point where like nobody can ever go faster, and we always go faster. I think it's really a fascinating thing. But as it relates to these high-level competitions, there's just something about the atmosphere that brings out the best in people. Not everybody, but for the competitors that are wired to go to those competitions, that have been to world championships already, that have already won national championships, there's something about those events that just bring out the best in you. And for me, I fell short in a lot of my competitions. I think that throughout my career, if I look back on it in retrospect, I wasn't the best mid-season swimmer or even NCAA swimmer. But for some reason, Olympic trials and the Olympics, I always pulled it out and turned it on.
Yeah.
And I was joking around on the golf course with a buddy of mine about this last weekend. It's like when the pressure's on, I really just crave that and I love it. And I'm able to summon something a little bit extra. I don't know exactly why or how that is, but I think that many other athletes, they do it the same way. Certainly there's a logical explanation to it as well in terms of the preparation, the focus, the where your training plan maps a culmination at a certain event. But I think it's deeper than that. So many times training plans go completely wrong and sideways, and the greats pull it out when it matters.
Do you ever get that certain level of pressure in venture, or is it that's really only for athletics?
Yeah, I wish I had a close comparable, but I don't. I think the closest amount in venture is probably when we're competing to try and win a founder relationship and get the opportunity to work with them.
Does that fire you up at all?
It does, but it's less it's less single variate than being an individual sport athlete.
Got it.
In swimming, I can only control how fast I go and what I would do. I couldn't control my competitors. I genuinely believe there's no honor in winning when your competitors are at their worst, so I never wanted that to be the case. So I try to bring that mentality over here to what we do at Harpoon and our career in venture is, I want to go head-to-head with the best and beat them when they're at their best. Even if that doesn't result in the best business outcome, I just love the honor of the competition and trying to push ourselves to maximize what we can do. I think a lot of founders feel similarly with that. What's different about venture capital and startups is you can create your own sport. Peter Thiel has a quote that competition is for losers. Well, under that paradigm, I shouldn't be competing in the swimming pool under the same race. I should invent my own aquatic sport and convince everybody else to race me in that.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what startups are doing. The successful ones redefine a new sport. They create a new playing field, and they force everybody else to adjust to that new paradigm, that new sport. Wow. And I think that's just creatively much different and takes a different kind of work, which is no less intense, but it's just very different.
Is that what y'all are trying to do compared to in QTEL, like redefining investing in this space? Would you say like American exception?
Yeah, we like to talk about it in American technological dominance. Those words to me mean a lot. I love America. I love what we've done from a high-tech ecosystem, and I love the word dominance for a number of reasons. So that's how we think about it here. So In-Q-Tel really set the stage for this whole investable category, in my opinion. They started in around 2000. They invest in dual use technologies, which are things that apply to the enterprise or the commercial world, as well as servicing national security oriented customers. They were early in companies like Databricks and CrowdStrike and Anduril and a whole bunch of other really, really big ones that have been category creating businesses in their own right. But they are a strategic investor. They serve government sector customers. We're a for-profit venture firm. We serve our limited partners. Mm-hmm. We do have a similar outlook and philosophy, and we want to invest in a similar type of companies. But they have a strategic angle similar to, I would say, the corporate venture arms of a Cisco or an IBM or a Snowflake, et cetera. They want to invest in things that make financial sense, but there is also a strategic logic for why they're investing in things because it complements their core platform. We don't have that advantage or encumbrance.
Yeah. So I want to kind of go back to that crunch time feeling, that moment when you're like, you're about to be in the biggest race of your life. 2004 Athens Olympics. I can't even imagine being in Athens.
Chills.
For the Olympics. I mean, what was that like for your first Olympics to be? I mean, that's the greatest place for it to be.
I agree. I think it is one of the greatest places for it to be. It's the birthplace of the modern Olympic Games. Right. Yeah. So much history there. When you fly into town, seeing things, the sites like the Acropolis, and it's just unbelievable. It's where it all started. And to go back there and to have the opportunity to compete, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Yeah. It's funny. Only with age and experience do you realize how little you knew then.
Yeah.
I was like some of the young founders that I meet right now. Young, brash, full of piss and vinegar, wanting to change the world, wanting to go faster than anybody else had ever gone. And logically, many of my coaches and many of those around us said, hey, why don't we take a step back here and be a little bit more, practical about what we're going to accomplish. And I never have been one to think that way for whatever reason. Like, no, I'm going to go be the best in the world. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm going to beat the world record holder. I'm going to set it myself.
Yeah.
Again, was a little bit short of that, but did set at the time. I think I had 3 American records: the 400, or shortly thereafter, the 400, the 800, and the 1500. So faster than any American had ever gone in those events, and held 3 of them concurrently. But it was definitely an awe-striking experience to go there and to see what that's like. One of the fondest memories I have is not just with the Olympic swim team and our competitors from around the world and competing against the Aussies, but you get to see the gymnasts, and you get to see the weightlifters, and you get to see the NBA players. And it's a really fascinating thing when you're at the Olympic Village, where everybody's living, eating the same, essentially cafeteria food, and you have just all kinds of different body types and all kinds of different people that are, like, that person is meant to be a weightlifter. Yeah. That person is meant to be a swimmer. That person is meant to be a gymnast. And so it almost feels a little bit like a circus, because it's just everyone is meant to be the sport that they're in. And it's obvious when you see them walking through the village.
That's really cool.
Jumping back to the founder side of things, do you tell founders, like, hey, do you support their initiatives of, I want to go as fast as we possibly can, grow quickly, and be the number one people in this space? Or do you kind of take the advice that your coaches gave you and say, let's take a step back here, let's analyze what's going on, let's be patient with the work that we're doing? Or do you support them and say, run, do it, let's go and move fast?
Send it. That's generally my philosophy, because that's the way I personally think about things. I don't think that I would have ever broken any American records if I was doing things with half measures. That said, I think people are better today because they have a little bit more calibration than I did then. A couple examples. I swam for some coaches that were very old school in nature. And I say that with all the respect in the world. I probably wouldn't have been nearly as good were it not for them. But it was much more of the yardage, pound it out, show me you're a man every single day in the pool, never holding back. So sort of the equivalent of doing Bud's Hell Week every single week.
Yep.
The body can only take so much, and the mind can only take so much. I think we are much more intelligent about our training regimen these days than we were then, just broadly speaking. Also, diet is another thing that we tended to overlook. Very oftentimes after I did a 10,000 meter workout, which is 6-7 miles in the pool, all right, hey, good practice. Go home, get a large pizza. And I'd go home and I'd eat a large pizza. These days, I don't think eating a large pizza is the standard for
Just
healthy
several
eating
thousand
and
calories,
high
just
performance.
cheese.
Obviously, you need the calories, but I think there's a more intelligent way to
Yeah.
do those types of things. So similar to what I was saying earlier, with age comes experience. So my default is looking for the founders that need the reins pulled in a little bit versus the ones that need it let out. I think that was the kind of athlete I was. I needed the reins pulled in on me a little bit versus them let out. In the SEAL teams, that's ultimately what we screen for. And the best guys, the ones that are always looking for work, that are always pushing the envelope. And it's the duty of the leaders to help manage that and channel that energy, not to stifle it, but to channel it appropriately. And I think with founders, that's how I think about my role now and what we're looking for and how we work with them thereafter is to look for the people that I don't think we've had a company yet that's gone well where we've had to let the reins out.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
How do you recognize that in a founder in your first meeting with them? Like the reins kind of pulled in a little bit. Like they have what it takes, the tenacity in that first meeting.
I used to have the arrogance and hubris to think that I could recognize it in the first meeting. And recently it dawned on me, it's a simple observation, that in the SEAL teams, through our selection process, we've gotten very sophisticated in it. Undeniably, nowadays we have a higher caliber of people coming in the door to try out, that are trying out, that are going through buds. When I went through, we had a higher caliber of people just in terms of numbers and the averages of their test scores, their physical fitness scores, their prior leadership experience. They're oftentimes team captains, all these types of things. Then we had 10 years prior, and sort of the pattern goes on from there. So I think undeniably we have a higher baseline of talent that's coming into that program. But for some reason, 70% of the people that show up still don't make it through. They still don't make it through. You'd think, to me anyways, that if we had all this rigorous analytics and testing beforehand, that we'd have something like, we'd invert that ratio.
Right.
Instead of it being 70-30 one way, it'd be 70-30 the other way. And it's just not the case for some reason. And so as I look back on that and think through when we're looking at investing in companies, do I expect to be better than the SEAL selection process in terms of who's going to make it through? Maybe, but maybe not. And so nobody that shows up to SEAL training doesn't have mountains of psychological assessment and physical assessment and test score assessment to think that they have what it takes. Everybody who shows up theoretically has what it takes. But not everyone actually does when they're in the pressure cooker. And so when I think I keep that in the back of my mind, that I do my best, certainly, always. But the pressure cooker changes things. And it's not just the pressure cooker, it's the future. It's competitors. It's incumbents. It's booms and busts of the investment cycle. You don't always control your entire destiny.
Yeah.
But when you do, some amazing things happen. And it's also fascinating to see how many amazing companies that we see today had near-death experiences.
Yep.
Whether it be NVIDIA or Apple or what have you.
Yeah.
The trillion-dollar companies we have, I don't know the exact stats on this, but numerous. There's only a handful of trillion-dollar companies out there, at least 2 of which came within a month of being cash out at some point.
Wow.
So it makes you think, like, what about the ones that, are there some that could have been trillion-dollar companies today that just, for whatever reason, didn't turn the corner in terms of solvency? Maybe.
Now, is that the founder, or is that just maybe with the way the market was going?
Conditions.
Yeah, market conditions, or...
I think it's a combination thereof. I personally attribute most of it to the founders, because the most prolific founders pull out miracles.
They make it
and you
happen.
need a series of miracles to string together to make a large business that changes the world or an industry. And
They have a
it's
luck
sort
on
of
their side,
it's sort of
kind of.
like being in that sense, maybe it's like being an Olympian. The ones who's like, when it matters the most, they pull it out. And even if they're sick or not feeling well, the training didn't go well, the Olympians that I admire are the ones that, in spite of all the adversity, they still conquer.
Yeah.
And I think that's why everyone loves watching the Olympics, is those human stories.
Yep.
It's not just the ones like, oh, they're really good, they're for sure going to win. That's not really what it's about. It's about the athletes where you didn't think it was going to happen, but
Yeah.
their true exceptionalism came through in that moment.
And you just need a thousandth of a second, as you probably witnessed when you were in Beijing in 2008,
Yeah.
being teammates with Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get asked about this all the time. Like, what's something about Michael Phelps that people don't know? What you actually knew him.
Yeah.
You were his teammate in
Yeah.
Beijing, watching him, I mean, do probably the most unbelievable athletic feat ever. Like 8 in 8 gold medals. Did he get a world record in all of them, or 7
Not
of
in
them?
all of them, but I mean, I
It's-
can't remember
it's
the exact amount.
insane,
A lot of them,
Yeah.
if not most of them. There's a record of some sort, Olympic or world.
Yep.
Most of them, I think, had to be world in order to win. I'll never forget the training camp with Michael. And he in some of his Olympic coverage recently was talking a little bit about this, the people who believed in him and who didn't. He had this irrational turned rational belief in himself and what he could do. And he didn't let the doubt creep in, which has crept into me. It creeps into me to this day all the time. I think that's sort of human nature. He had this weird ability to channel that into something really special. And I remember in the pre-Olympic training camp, Ian Thorpe, who was also competing in 2008, but again, he was one of the heroes of 2000, won some more golds in 2004, beat Michael in a couple of events there, was saying something along the lines of like, hey, I don't think Michael can win 8. If anybody can do it, it's going to be him, but winning 8's like really, really hard. Like no one's ever going to do it kind of thing.
Yep.
And Michael took that so personally just ignited a fire. And I think, I mean, there's plenty of other factors that went into that. That is the one that I just really fueled him to the next level to win every single one of those. But not all of those medals were purely based on Michael. I mean, Jason Lezak winning the 4x100 freestyle at the end,
Oh my gosh.
reeling those folks in.
I literally got
like
chills.
it's
You
just
saying that.
yeah.
Like,
It's
literally,
just
that
really
is-
unbelievable. So it wasn't just Michael; it was a full team effort in the context of the relays and the
Yeah.
support that he had around him. But he's a very unique guy that had just this crazy belief in himself. He was sort of like the Steve Jobs of the swimming world. Like, we're going to go make it happen, and we're not going to listen to the naysayers. And
Yeah.
he
Are
said,
y'all friends?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is he? What is he like? Like personality wise, is he cool? Is
Yeah,
he
he's
weird?
cool. He's intense, but he's cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that anybody that shared those journeys, I mean, everybody, the founder, people would say maybe I'm a unique guy. I don't know. But like the founders we work with are all unique, strong personality folks.
Yeah.
Same thing in my military experience. You have very unique, strong personalities. And swimming, you have the same type of thing. You have just everything you can imagine. And he's a very strong personality and relentless in his pursuit of excellence. And I think we can all learn a lot from what Michael did and all, try to emulate that. Someday maybe somebody will win 9 gold medals. I don't know, but
Someone's listening right now saying,
somebody,
"Oh, I can't win 9."
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
I'm
see.
gonna
Yeah,
win
that's what
9.
you gotta tell him. You can't win 9.
You
then,
can't
then
win
maybe
9.
they
You
will.
gotta tell your founders that you can't raise this next round.
Yeah, you can't do it.
The girl, she's my fiance as of a week ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We met her. She works at Chick-fil-A. We were there. She was working at the window, and I said, "I'm gonna go ask that girl for a number."
Oh,
And
yeah.
he said,
It's like, no, you won't.
You won't
I'll
do
put
it.
the bank that you won't get her
Yeah.
number, dude.
And when that just like lit, I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna."
Well, because I
do
knew
it.
what I was doing to him. I was
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah,
I
totally.
gotta get
Reverse psychology is one of my favorite tactics.
Yeah, and it's like I'll let it work on me. I know what he's doing, but I'm gonna go ask the girl for a number. I'm gonna do it. And now
Everybody
she's
needs that
my
extra
fiance.
extra inch. In this case, I think Phelps benefited from that extra inch of pressure.
Yeah.
That Ian Thorpe gave him at the right time, at the right place. Was not intentional necessarily, but so maybe there's a lesson we can learn from that, and we can channel that intentionality. It's sort of the same in the weight room or whatever. Oh, you can't lift that. Oh, watch me. Watch me.
Speaking of pressure, you go from being an Olympian to a Navy SEAL.
Right.
What is the pressure like when you're going on a mission as a Navy SEAL?
Yeah. I think rewinding the clock slightly.
Yeah.
Showing up into Bud's training, having that as a target on my back. The instructors always love to have a lot of fun at the expense of the students. And I love it. One of my biggest regrets in life is never being a first phase instructor. Man, I would have loved that. It's no different, in my opinion, than being just like one of those hard ass coaches like I used to have. They're going to help you channel your best. that's what they're there for. And it's the same thing with those first phase instructors. They're there to make sure the community upholds a standard and that the people coming into it are willing of the honor of serving with some of the bravest people in the world. And so I'll never forget trying to keep that quiet, trying not to tell anybody.
I've seen you before somewhere, man.
Yeah, trying to keep that quiet.
No, not me.
That lasted all of 30 minutes. Yeah, first day, first beach run, the instructors, with a megaphone, "Hey, Olympian, where you at? Raise your hand."
Man,
And there's 200 dudes out on the beach gearing up for a 4-mile time run. 200 guys. And chances, go figure, there wasn't another Olympian there raising his hand. Unfortunately, I wish there was a couple of us to broaden the surface area, but there wasn't. And so raised my hand like, all right, yeah, check. We got eyes on. And so I'm like, oh, great, here we go. And so that was, and so, but they do that to everybody in their own way. For me, it just happened to be that. So you can't really take it personally. Anytime you have sort of chink in your armor, they're going to try and exploit it, because that's the enemy's trying to do, either when bullets are flying or psychologically should the worst happen. So they're exposing that, I think, with good reason. And everybody has their Achilles heel. Everyone has their thing. They get their target on the back. And that was mine.
How'd they make you pay for it?
In extra attention, some extra wet and sandies. Hey, Olympian, hit the surf zone. Bring your swim buddy.
Yep.
And they try to say, hey, Jensen wasn't putting his knee to the ground on these lunges, so the whole class is getting punished because of Jensen.
Wow.
And so these types of things, which, I'm sure I probably wasn't putting my knee to the ground. I was hurting. So I wasn't the best performer, in my opinion, and I think others would say that as well. But I look back on that as one of the fondest experiences I've had in my entire life. I look back on anything that I've ever done that was really, really, really hard, and those are the best times. More recently, my cousin just had her first child.
Congrats.
A couple days ago. Thank you very much. So we went up to see, and mom was glowing, the husband was glowing, everyone's looking good. I'm like, so hey guys, this is easy as you thought it would be. They're like, oh, we haven't slept in like 4 nights. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to the club, man. This is how it goes. And so, but I look back on the birth of my kids and going through that. I think everybody does that has them, and it's just, wow, like we did it as a couple. What an amazing experience. And that's how I feel about going through, any of the other hard things we've gone through. I don't think you can actually, anything worth doing and anything impactful to your life is never the easy things. I would challenge anybody here or who's listening to say, oh, like that was great, but it was easy.
Yeah. The best part of life's the struggle.
F that. There's nothing that is worthwhile in life that's easy, period.
You mentioned a little bit earlier, like how sometimes doubt creeps in, and like how it did whenever you were in the Olympics, and even now with fundraising and in some capacity, or just with founders. How do you get that doubt out of your head, or how do you just pivot to confidence in yourself?
Yeah, I'm sure everyone has their own strategy. For me, it's mentors and sounding boards and talking to people that have been through it. I love, I seek those people out, and with coaches, in swimming, I think you have that organic mentorship / coach, hence the term. They're not only there to help you train well in the pool, they're there to help you get your mind right and get your psychology under control, and to help nurture you as, in my case, a young man. Football player, every athlete, I think, looks at their coaches as sort of like a parental figure, at least the great ones. The great ones are like second fathers or mothers to various athletes that swim with them or work out with them. And so I feel like I had that in my career. And to this day, I try to be vulnerable with the people that have been there before. I have a handful of folks that are not only mentors, but very close friends. And when I'm going through something that's challenging, I've either made a bad decision or something that was a good decision at the time has turned bad, I talk to them about what they went through and live from their experience. So much more efficient than if you can internalize those lessons learned that somebody else has learned the hard way. You're going to be one step ahead. And I think the great mentors and the great, venture capitalists out there are able to endow that experience with the partners that they're working with.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've gone kind of through your timeline, and I think of these authority figures in your life, from the swim coaches to the drill sergeants to the buds instructors. These people went hard on you, and it's turned you into I mean, in so many ways, you found so much success throughout your life, probably because of how hard you were pushed. Now that you are the boss,
Yeah.
do you push your team hard? And how do you find that balance of saying, if you want to be an Olympic great, I'm gonna have to push you really, really
Yeah.
hard in the pool. Whereas in a venture capital firm, does that translate?
Yeah, you should bring him in here and we should
Yeah.
ask him. But
Or even your founders too.
yeah, I try to, but I think every athlete who becomes a coach goes through a journey.
Mm.
You've been an athlete on the receiving end of that mentorship and coaching. And then sometimes many of these athletes, transcend their sport from an athlete standpoint and move into a coaching role. And it's not always instantaneous. Just because you're a great ball player or a great swimmer doesn't mean you're a great coach.
Mm-hmm.
There's differences there. So I try to embody that, but it's definitely a journey for me. It's a journey for everybody in what we're going through. I think I was fortunate to have the experience to go from an athlete to an officer in the SEAL teams, where I've had to learn how to be a leader, learn how to channel that. And it's very different than being an individual contributor. And then now subsequently moving into my role as the leader of this firm, trying to build up a team around me and set clear guidance and high standards is something that I try to do. And I think it's more akin to my time in the military than it is to my time in sports.
Is there any one thing you can think of that you learned from a coach or instructor throughout your life that you've said, like, man, I love the way they did that, or I love the way they said that. I'm going to put that in as a leader myself someday. I'm going to be that kind of a coach. I'm going to say this in the mirror in the morning before I go to work. Was there anything like that you just stuck out to you as being, wow, this is good leadership?
I'm sure there are. I mean, I've had the opportunity to work for some of the most battle-hardened leaders in the world.
Yeah.
And coaches that have helped their swimmers win numerous medals and numerous world records and Olympic gold medals. But I think the thing that stands out is more broad. I think too often, and this is myself projecting, people want to hold others back for some reason. I don't know what it is. Too often are there people that want to say, that's great, but why don't we temper that enthusiasm? And now maybe it's hit home even more because I got young kids. It's too easy to dismiss dreams, too easy to stifle creativity and aspiration. I think our education system doesn't do a great job of doing it. They want you to fit into a certain mold where success is predefined without really thinking outside of the box.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's less of how do we do this and more of how does it get bigger? Is that the extent of your vision, or is it much larger? Some people already have that just built into themselves. Other times, people like me sometimes need that coaxed out of them. Like, okay, great. You want to drop this amount of time? What would it be like if we dropped that amount of time, which is double than what you thought?
Yeah.
Just expand your mind of what's possible. And I think you'd be surprised in what you can accomplish. And I think there's innovators and entrepreneurs of our generation like Elon Musk who consistently redefine what's possible.
Yeah.
That's what really excites me. And if you look back through our technological progress as a country, I was looking at some statistics the other day. We went from the Wright brothers' first flight to landing a man on the moon in about 60 years. It's been about 60 years since then. What have we really done?
Yeah.
I'm sure we've done some things, but they don't come immediately to mind, which is part of the problem. I think we need to get back to that philosophy of risk taking and pushing the envelope and asking, well, why not instead of why? And just really going as far as we can with our finite time on this earth and enjoying the journey regardless of where we end up.
Is that a culture issue for the average American, you think, that maybe we don't dream as big as we once did?
I think so.
And how does that change? Is that a top-down thing that starts with the president of the United States, or is that much more of a within the family? What are we teaching our kids? How are we challenging them to reach for bigger and greater things?
Simple answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
If I knew, I'd do something about it, perhaps. But I don't know. In my opinion, at least when I was growing up, I remember looking up to the people that had accomplished amazing things and be like, I want to be like that person.
Mm.
Wow. In swimming, that's how it really hit home with me. I don't know if it's social media or just culture or what have you, but I get the perception that it's a little bit different today. I could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot. I get the perception that it's not like, how can I be like that? It's more of like, how can I tear that person down?
Yeah.
To be more like me. That's fucked up.
To be more like me, yeah.
So I think that we need to reorient how we think about things to truly, have admiration for the people that took the risk and went out there and did great things. The explorers, the Chuck Yeagers who breaks the sound barrier, and the astronauts land on the moon, and in this case, in a tech world, the entrepreneurship that Elon has demonstrated and others that are out there.
Yeah,
I think those should be what the next generation should target for, versus having some sense of animosity towards them. What are the great explorers of our era? I mean, I can't think of any, which is sad.
No.
Yeah.
Like, we used to hold up on a pedestal our explorers, our astronauts, those that had tremendous aerospace accomplishments and before. And now I think that we just don't have that. So maybe it's cultural, maybe it's leadership, but I think they're intertwined. I think we need the audacity of a vision of a JFK who says we're going to put somebody on the moon in a decade, and it's never been done before.
Not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
Yeah, because it's hard. Like, what is that? What is that today? I don't know what that is. And maybe that's the problem, that I don't know what that is.
You need to figure
We
what
should
that
all know what that is.
Yeah.
Like, as a society, as mankind, how do we further our common pursuit? And I think we're sort of missing that right now.
I think the Olympics is something that kind of does transcend that. I don't know what it is, but it's like this. We have this skepticism and this. What's the word that people are just kind of. There's a word for it, but I just think people lack a sense of wonder and excitement about doing hard things, big things. And I do think the Olympics every 4 years kind of gets everyone back into that place.
Well,
I agree.
It makes everyone patriotic again. At least for like the States, I've seen just so many people say like, still screw the US, but now I'm like an American around the Olympics, which is so lame to say like these several weeks I'll be an American.
Yeah.
But like it really does like bring something out of people where you are proud of your country or proud of like, wonder or imagination, creativity, energy.
I think it's a global phenomenon. I don't think it's just the United States. I think it's every country. I mean, maybe not every, but a lot of countries, they feel that, that pride in their country and the athletes that represented them, not only in success, but in defeat. And we feel it for roughly a month in July, August, every 4 years.
Yeah.
I think we need some more Olympic style things globally. I don't know what that is, but I feel like we haven't had it in a while. Yeah.
A new space race.
A new space. I mean, we have that to a little bit.
Yep.
Boeing's not, keeping up seemingly, but hopefully they do.
I think we've mostly covered this your life story of like, what is that from Navy SEAL to venture capitalist? I'm sure that's all kinds of decisions and moments in your life that leads from one to another. But what was the moment where you said, okay, I'm done with being a Navy SEAL and I'm going to go do the next thing for me? And then when did you realize the next thing is venture capital, investing in the next 10 years, 20 years?
That's a great question. And I think the difference between my pursuit of the Olympics and my pursuit of being in the military to my pursuit for another career is the final one was much more ambiguous and less like declarative.
Sure.
It's like declarative. Hey, I want to be a Navy SEAL. Okay, ready, go. There's a process for that. Went through a deep amount of soul searching and trying to find where I fit in and my curiosities, my interests, my talents. And it sort of happened by accident, more or less. In hindsight, it's easy to rationalize and say that it was obvious. We were working with enabling technology during my second deployment where we had much more tech-enabled things that we were using in the SEAL teams. And out of that curiosity, I was like, wow, like what are the best in the business building, and what are they investing in? Where better to learn that than up in the Bay Area, where I worked with a couple other firms, Andreessen Horowitz and Lightspeed, where I got to understand that and got to learn that from the best in the business who've been doing it for decades previously. And it wasn't until I was at Lightspeed that really the aha moment was maybe I can combine the things I really care about, supporting the people that I deeply love, but as it relates to the technology industry. So that was more unfolded through serendipity and opportunity, and it just took the me to go out there and I guess grab it a little bit. But it's really been an interesting evolution. One of the evolutions that I've had that really dawned on me more philosophically, last summer. I think I was taught the concept of delayed gratification. I had this every time in swimming. You have this in the military. You have it in investing. The concept of work hard today for a better tomorrow. In swimming, it's very obvious. You work hard all season to do well at a swim meet.
Don't eat certain foods.
Delayed gratification. Like, hey, you will sacrifice today so that you can accomplish tomorrow. Yeah. The same thing going through military training. And I think it's the same thing in investing. Is you work hard today, you do your research now so that you can have success later. But I think more broadly in life, it's a concept I've been thinking more about, is that delayed gratification has marginal returns over time.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that when you're younger in your life, you work hard for a greater tomorrow. At some point, that tomorrow is today. And I intersect that with my personal life, my family life, being there and being present with my kids and balancing all of these things. It's very easy for ambitious young professionals. I don't know if I'm young anymore, but
definitely
younger than some, older than others.
Yeah,
it's a concept of I still value hard work. I still want to pass along those attributes. I still want to model that behavior. But what's the marginal benefit of it in terms of what I'm sacrificing on the other hand? When I was single and singularly focused on swimming, there was no, the benefit was astounding to sacrifice today to have a better tomorrow. But as we think about, moving forward in each of our lives, I think the older you get, probably makes more sense to focus on the present, because what used to be tomorrow is now today.
Yeah. Larsson, we've talked about the Olympics, we've talked about Navy SEALs, talked about venture. We really appreciate your time, sir. Thanks for allowing us into your office. It's been such a great time, dude.
Guys. This is fun.
Dude, thank you again, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, you can look into that camera. Tell everyone where to find you: LinkedIn, Twitter, website for Harpoon.
Larsson Jensen, Larsen, Jensen. You can hit me up on my email as well, larson@harpoon.vc. So thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Larsson. Thanks again, man.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.